things that I've learned in the process of doing public speaking is that one way to get your audience's attention is to show them cute things. It can be children, animals, whatever the case is. Today, the cute thing is actually me. This is me 30 years ago. So now that I have your attention, we are going to get started. I want to share with you about mental space. For a lot of us, when we think about space, we might think about the atmosphere. There's so many things that come to mind, but whatever it is that comes to your mind, space always has meaning and energy attached to it. So I want you for a split second, just think about what is your safe space. Think about it. For me, my safe space looks something like this. I love to travel, so I think about venues that I've gone to. I think about my husband. I think about my home. Those are my safe spaces. Whatever your safe space is, when you think about it, an image comes to your mind that is just as vivid and unique to you and your unique story. However, one of the spaces that we often don't think about at all is our mental space. It's the one that is most important to us. It's where we live, believe it or not, the majority of our lives. In fact, as we speak right now, most of you are in your mental space. But we don't think about it. We don't spend a lot of time really just thinking about the quality of our mental space. There's a whole science to it, and as a doctor, I appreciate good old-fashioned science. An individual by the name of Gallus Faconis came up with the idea of mental space. And however way you define it, today I really just want to talk about the practicality of mental space. I want to share with you 5 aspects of it. The first is that mental space can be static or it can be dynamic. What I mean by that is there is so much capacity for your mental space to change, expand, evolve, but it really depends on you. On the flip side, your mental space can be exactly the same. No progress, no change, staying the same for all of your life. The other aspect of mental space I want to share with you is the fact that mental space is multidimensional. Whenever you think about space, for most of us, like the room we're in right now, there are dimensions that are attached to it. The difference between physical spaces and mental space is that there's so many layers to it. There are different facets to mental space. The third thing about mental space is you can't really define it. Much like this picture, you're wondering, what is it? How does it work? It's very complicated. There's so many aspects to it, and you can't pinpoint one thing that makes your mental space. And people define it as your mind, as your brain, as a combination of both. Another aspect of mental space that I think is really important is that there is a reciprocity between mental space and all the other spaces in your life. Think about it for a second. If you go to a place, say you go to the ocean, for whatever reason, just seeing the blue of the ocean makes your mind freer, clearer. However, for most of us, our mental space is overloaded, very focused on so many things and nothing at the same time, believe it or not. So today I want to share with you 5 steps or tricks or tips to make your mental space work for you that I hope you can integrate after we get out of here today. Question for you though, what does your mental space look like? For me, a few years ago, it looked something like this. A bunch of rubbish. Just too many things together, making no kind of sense whatsoever. But there are things you can do to actually fix it. The first thing I want you to consider doing is retraining your mind. Very easy, but very hard at the same time. The only way to retrain the mind, believe it or not, is by instituting habits. You do it over and over again, and over the course of time, those habits stick. That's really the only way that you can retrain your mind. The first things first is silence. Yes, silence. Very important to declutter your mind. You cannot think, you cannot process anything with too much noise going on. So the practical step for you is literally from time to time, just have silence. No sounds, no music, no conversation. The second thing is schedule an appointment weekly with yourself. It sounds very silly, but it's very important. Even if it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever the case is, this is your chance to connect with yourself and connect with your mind. For me, my mental space time is on Sundays. People who know me don't call me on Sundays. The other thing you can do is journal. You can be a traditionalist in terms of your journaling if you want to write on paper, but for me, my phone is essentially my life, and so I journal on my phone. Much like before this presentation, I was writing about how I was freaking out about what I was about to do. So you can journal. It's a good way for you to declutter your mind. A third thing that you want to think about is limiting what actually comes into your mental space. There's so much information coming at us. From time to time, you need to just say, no, I'm not letting this come into my mental space. Now, are there any millennials here? Raise your hand, don't be ashamed. For us, a good friend of ours is to limit social media. A lot of times we spend so many hours scrolling through social media looking at nothing and everything. I don't know how it's possible for a surgeon to actually be scrolling through social media before surgeries, but I used to do it. Yes, true story. And so one thing I had to do is stop doing that. However, the final thing that I think that is really important for most of us is letting go of the past. So many of us have what I call mental cabinets of our failures or mistakes that we rehash over and over again. We pull it out, once in a while we go over it, and all it does is take up valuable space that can be used for something else. Finally, fix your focus. What I mean by that is none of us are superhuman. You cannot do everything, and it's okay. Once in a while, you need to narrow down, re-identify your priorities, and they change over time. The things that were important to me at 21, at 25, not the same things that are important to me at 30. Now, I earlier said that cute things are a good way to get your attention, and so I'm going to leave you a cute image, which is me, in person and before, and I want to encourage you to think about ways that you can declutter your mental space, because I promise you, if you do that, your potential will in fact increase. Thank you.